Charles Sahlberg, and this time I have a video tutorial that a number of customers have asked for on how to install a remote control. This tutorial requires a little more understanding of your electrical wiring abilities, but in no means is it at all difficult. Remote controls are a lot of fun, are rather easy to connect, but require some planning in advance. What do you want to achieve with your remote control? I have installed a number of these, and I feel most are used just to turn on and off the entire dollhouse. And if that's what you want to do, I suggest that you just put a simple switch on the side of the dollhouse to turn everything on and forget the remote control. So what we need to do first is to decide how we are going to use this remote. You can use it in several different ways. Number one, use it to tell a story. You might want to have the individuals that live in the dollhouse walk up to the dollhouse and the porch light is on, and then they'll go inside. You'll turn the hall light on and turn off the porch light and advance through one room and another, turning off the lights as you go or turning on the lights as you go, and tell a story for people that are looking at the dollhouse for the first time. Number two, you can use it to make different lighting effects. For instance, if you have a display box and you want to show a setting with the sun coming up, and later on to have a high noon effect, and you can set the remote control to control the different light effects that you have put into the room box. Number three, you simply can control different zones. For instance, the landscape lighting, outdoor porch and or front door lights. To control the indirect LEDs. Now we put LEDs into this dollhouse, and we put a switch down at the bottom here so I can turn off the LEDs, and all we have are the incandescent lights of the dollhouse that are on, and we can control that with a remote control. We can control different features such as fireplace logs, the ceiling fan, as we did in an earlier video that we have up here with the backyard barbecue smoker that we can set up with the remote control. And number four, you can also use a remote control to turn on individual dollhouses and room boxes within a room. I've done 3 or 4 people's houses that have a whole wall of room boxes, and we've put in a remote control to turn on each of the individual room boxes. So when you have people coming over, you can just turn one on at a time, explain what is in each of the room boxes, and use the remote control for that. Now that we know how it will be used, we can take a closer look at these remote controls at the workbench. Now that we're at the workbench, let's just introduce you to the different remote controls that I have on my website. The first one we've already shown you when we were installing the ceiling fan, and this is the 4-channel remote control, which works basically the same as the 8 and the 12-channel remote controls. You'll notice that we have these little black boxes are relays, and that's the actual switching components that work to turn on and off different channels. So we have, this is a 4-channel, these are 4 relays that are in here. The second one that we have is the 8-channel remote control. And you can see we have 8 of these boxes that are different relays that are on here. And then we have a 12-channel remote control. They're basically the same thing. They are by different manufacturers, and they all have different instructions to go with them. So we're going to point out a couple of the differences. I also have a 16-channel that I bring in once in a while, but I don't sell a lot of them, so I don't have them actually listed on my shopping cart. We're going to be working with the 8-channel remote control for doing all of the basic wiring, but I did want to show a couple of differences between the 12 and the 8-channel. The two controllers look basically the same, except we have 8 buttons on one and 12 on the other. So we can set those aside. The big differences are in the boards themselves. You can see that we have the 12 relay boxes on the 12 channel, and we have just the 8 on the 8 channel. We do have a series of junction blocks on each one of them for hooking up the individual lighting that we have. I take advantage of these boards. You're going to be putting the power connection on the lower section here, which has a plus and a minus mark down below for the red going to positive of the 12 volts of the 12 volts DC of the Dollhouse will plug into here to power this board. And we have just the 2 connections over here marked plus and minus for the 12-channel remote. Once the board is powered, then we're going to be connecting to the connection blocks on the side here. This one is marked in sets of 3, A, B, and C. This one actually is marked as normally open, and it gives you the channel number. So this is channel 8 on this section right here. This is channel 1 over here. So when you hit the number 1 button on your remote control, it'll turn on the light that you have plugged into this first set of 3 screws that are on here. I make it a lot easier because I've pre-wired these so that all you need to do is bring down the red or the positive side of each light and connect it to whatever terminal that you want to the remote control to turn the light on with. So if we're using button 1 on the remote control, it would be connected over here to the A terminal or the normally closed, which is the 3rd screw that's on here. And we'll get into that as we actually wire this up. On the 12 channel, it's a little bit different because we have A, B, and C, and A is normally open on this one. So without looking at the directions, I'm not sure which one is the first channel, but we'll say it's in the same location. And we only have to connect the one side of our light, the red side of our light, to the A terminal on each one of these. And if this is channel 1, it would be connected to that screw, and channel 2 would be connected to this screw. This screw right there. There are a couple other things I might mention on both of these boards. They have a button that's down here on this one, and it's up here on this one. That's the memory button. You do not want to touch the memory button because that erases the program that's set up in there that works and makes these work like an actual switch, so that when you turn on the remote control button, it will switch your light on or off. So don't ever mess with those 2 buttons. Once these get set up, they work very, very well. The other thing that I want to mention is the remote control itself draws current. So you're going to have a use of milliamps for each one of the relays that you are turning on. On the 8-channel one, for when you turn on just one channel, it only draws 23 milliamps, which is about 2 incandescent bulbs. When you turn on all 8 of them and they're on at the same time, you're actually drawing a full 215 milliamps, which is 1/4 of an amp. So if you have a 2 amp power supply into your Dollhouse, you've already used 1/4 of that power source. And you have to take this into consideration when wiring the Dollhouse. So I will not, or I generally will not set up a remote control unless you have at least a 2 amp power supply, and I suggest that most of you get the 6 amp power supply so that you know that you have enough power going to the dollhouse for the rest of the lighting that you're going to have into the dollhouse. On the 12 channel remote control, each of the channels draws 46 milliamps, which is almost twice what the 8 channel one is drawing. And it's simply the way these are wired, and they are different relays and different manufacturers, so they draw a little bit differently. When you have all 12 of these relays on the 12 channel remote, you're drawing a full 525 milliamps. So that's a half an amp of current. So you can see why I tell you not to use a 1 amp power supply to work these, because you only have a half an amp for the rest of the dollhouse, and you would use up that power pretty quickly. Let's start with the 8 channel, and we're going to go ahead and wire it up on a board that I've put together. Obviously, you're going to take this cover off, and I just throw this cover away. It doesn't have cutouts on the side for the wires to come in onto the side of the board here, so it's pretty well worthless to me. So we'll just set that aside. Then you need to decide where you're going to mount this board. I normally would mount it on the bottom of the dollhouse where we have our skirt that's on here. Once you bring all your wires to it and you hook this up, you shouldn't have to have need access to it unless you're changing one of your channels. So that's a good place to put it, is on the bottom, and that's why I recommend having a skirt on all of the dollhouses so that you have a space to be able to wire it. If you remember when we did the ceiling fan on this dollhouse, we put it in the tower at the top of the dollhouse. That made it a lot easier for you to see what I was doing, but we may have locked off that tower for all of our electrical components, making it more accessible for putting these things in. Wherever you decide to mount these, know that you're going to have to bring a series of wires down to the side terminals on this board. Once you have taken your remote control out of the package, you're going to want to mount this wherever you've chosen to put it. And there are a couple of ways that you can do it. You have 4 screws that are on this, and we can unscrew those 4 screws. I've obviously taken the 3 of them out already. And the panel itself is set up so that you have additional screw holes, and we can actually put a screw into each of these, then put our board back in place and screw in the 4 screws that we just took out. And I have the other one sitting over there, and that'll make it a good permanent fitting that's on there. But what I like to do, I take the board and I use this double stick foam tape, and I've pre-cut a couple pieces here, and I'll just put them on the back of the board. Peel off that backing paper, and we'll just do one side here so I can get this off when we're done. And then put it into the board, or the location where we're going to put it, push it down, and we've got it mounted, and it's not going to move. That works quite well. I then come back and I put double stick, or the electrical wiring flat tape, on both sides of the board. And that's because when we bring our individual lights down to be connected up, one side is connected, of our light is connected to the common or the black terminal. The other side is going to go into the remote control board, and we're going to connect that directly to the board. But if you bring both wires from each lamp that you're going to be controlling, you need to have a ground wire, and I leave it so that we can connect it directly in front of the board. But know that you can connect each of those wires to the closest ground wire in the dollhouse. So if you're bringing an attic light that you want to turn on with the remote control, connect the black wire in the attic where you have the ground running, and just bring one wire down to the board itself. Now, I have a series of wires that are coming out of the holes on the back of this board here, which are going to represent the individual lights that we want to put in. I want to mention something else to keep track of exactly what you're doing. You want to mark each one of your lights with a red and a black mark. Now, if you have LEDs, they probably have a red and a black wire, so it's already done for you. But let's say that you have the street light that I have here, and you have the cord coming off of it. I just cut the plug off, and then I mark one of them red and one of them black, so that I can keep track of all of the pairs of the wires that are coming down to our control board. This is actually an LED, so I pre-marked it so that I know which one's red and which one's black. Again, the black would be connected to the closest ground wherever this is going to be set up and displayed, and the red is going to be brought down to whichever terminal we want to control it with the remote control board. If you have just a regular ceiling light, we'll take this one as our regular ceiling light. I'm going to cut the paired wires, and I do it by just putting the knife in between there and pull that out, and that'll separate it so that I can pull this apart. And then I want to make sure that I color code each of these, and I'm going to mark all of my lamps in the dollhouse if they haven't been installed, and it's difficult to find which is which. If they're incandescent bulbs, it doesn't make any difference, but it sure helps to have the pairs marked. So I would go ahead and I would mark one of these black and one of them red. If in the future you're going to possibly be putting an LED bulb in here, then I want to put one in one of these sockets and determine which is red and which is black. And we do that by stripping the wires, the insulation off here. I'm going to take my 9-volt battery tester, and I'm just going to connect these up onto the end leads here. And you see I only have 2 lights that have come on. This one has the LED in it, and so I probably have these hooked up backwards. So we'll switch the 2 leads, swing it around this way, and lo and behold, all 3 of the LED, all of the lights come on. So we want to mark the one with our red probe red. So we'll go ahead and mark that one red. And mark the other one black. Now when we connect this up, if at a later date we want to change the bulb in it and put an LED in, we'll be able to put all of them in there, and it'll work without having to rewire the light in the future. If you know that you're never going to to change it, or if it happens to be the bipin bulbs that we don't have LEDs for, it doesn't make any difference. Just mark one lead black and one lead red. I went ahead and I've done these wires that are here because they're incandescent bulbs that are connected to it, and I went ahead and I marked one of them red and one of them black. What I need to do now is to pull out all of the black ones, and we'll tie those together and we'll solder them to the negative side of the board, and we can go to the closest location that we can find to connect that up. I think I've got them separated out, so we have basically 4 wires, because I have 4 lights. And there are all of the black ones. And I can go ahead and I can cut those. Now that we know that those are all the black leads, I can cut those. And then we'll strip just the ends of these, and I'm going to use our trick with the soldering iron and just put them on the board here and hold back and pull all of the insulation off, clean the soldering iron tip, and I can twist these wires together, and I'm going to fold those back a little bit. Then I'm going to go, this is really the closest black flat tape point that I have. So we'll just clean a spot right here. Make a circle. Go ahead and put a puddle of solder down there. Leave the iron on there for a second until it actually flows into there and makes a nice little puddle. Clean my tip off again. And bring those wires we twisted and solder them directly to this spot. Again, leave the heat of the iron on those wires until that solder actually flows into those, and we've buried it directly into the flat tape wire, and we've got the positive side, or the negative side, connected to our power source. Now, we need to have decided which lamp or which circuit each of these other leads, or the red side, goes to. And we needed to mark those as to what channel we wanted them to go to. Let's go back to the board that's on here. We need to provide power to this board here. So I need to take a red strip of wire and a black strip of wire. I've stripped the ends here, and we'll fold back an edge, and we'll start by going to the positive connection that I have here, with it, which we ran with the flat tape. And again, make a little bit of a puddle. Leave it there for a minute until it flows over that tape. And also do one on the negative side. Add some solder so we got a nice puddle. There she goes. Clean the iron off. And I'll take my red wire and connect it to the positive 12 volt DC circuit. If I just left it on top there until it melted into the puddle, hold it for a second until it solidifies, get my black wire, Do the same thing, get that into the puddle, let it solidify, and then we can take the other end and again I'll fold the leads back on themselves, or the bare wire back on itself. We've got the terminal block on the bottom here, and I think you can see that we have a little plus mark right here, so our red goes into that left screw, your left, and we'll tighten it down. And the black goes into the second one, which is marked negative. On this board, the last one is marked common, or ground, which is really the same thing. So you can actually put it on either one of those, but I'll put it into the middle one. Give it a, whoops, we obviously didn't do it. As I started to say, give it a tug to make sure that you got it in there. And I didn't. Give it a tug, make sure we got both of those in there. We now have powered the board, so when we put our power supply onto the Dollhouse, we've got this powered. Without any of the relays turned on, it virtually draws no power at all. Only when the relays are thrown do you start to use electricity on the thing. So as you turn on each one of the lights with the remote control, you're going to be using different amounts of power on this thing. Now that we've got this powered up, I want to get the instructions out. So we'll grab the instructions on the 8-channel remote, and I want to determine which is terminal or the block 1 that we're going to be using to connect our individual wires. And I like to put stickers on here, and I've marked 1 through 8 on these stickers, and I noticed that it tells me that with the power being connected here, channel 1 is on the top right. So by the way this is hooked up on here, channel 1 is over on this corner over here. So I'm going to take sticker number 1 and put it on the top of the relay that works when you hit channel 1 on the remote control. And then this goes counterclockwise, so it'll be 2, 3, 4, and I might also mention that on the 8-channel it's really easy because it has NO1, common 1, and then NC1. The NO is normally open, the NC is normally closed. So we're going to be hooking up to the first screw for channel 1, which is the 1 button on the remote control for whatever light that we want to put on 1. And this one would be 2, this is 3, this is 4, and then this is 5, 6, 7, and 8. So we'll continue and put 5, 6, 7, and 8. I have predetermined how I'm going to wire these that have come in, but as I said before, you need to have marked what light these go to and predetermine where it's going to go. So make a chart and number it 1 through 8 for the different channels and write what lights you want to come on, and then find the pair that belongs to those lights and number them as you bring them down to the control board. Strip that off, fold it back, and open up the gate. This will be number 5. Set that in there. And I'll take my next one. And this is number 8. And if you notice, each one that I'm doing, I'm giving it a tug after I screw it down to make sure that I'm making a connection with it. And get that all the way in there. So we've got a wire in each one of these 8. I do have an extra, the lamp that we put on here. Let's go ahead and we can add this one to number 8 also, just for to show you that we can hook up more than one item in there. So I can take my red wire and fold it back, and we'll undo the screw here again, and we'll put both of these on here. And then, of course, we'll come down to wherever the closest common is, which is right underneath here, which is why we put the flat tape along the side here, so we would have access to a ground. And we'll put a bubble. There we go. Clean the iron tip. And so we have these 4 terminals filled with a light. We have actually 2 lights on that last one. This could be connected up in the dollhouse and just bring one wire that's the common red that's going to be connected to there. So you don't have to bring all of the wires down to the basement or to the bottom of the dollhouse to wire it up. But if you want to, you certainly can do it that way. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the camera for a second and wire up the other side with a bunch of lights, and then we'll continue from there. Having taken a few minutes to wire the remaining 4 lights that were coming down from the dollhouse into the basement space, and then connecting onto the control board here for the remote control, we're ready to just play to see what we've come up with. I'm going to grab the remote control, and I did want to mention one thing. There is a battery that's inside the remote control, and when you push on the one of the buttons, the light in the center of the control does light up. You already noticed that by pushing 1, I've got our light over here that came on. I'm going to push number 2, and we'll continue to go 3, 4, 5, comes over to the other side, 6, 7, and 8. And we added the chandelier here to come on with the bulb that we had over there. Let me show you one thing that we can also do. I'm going to go backwards on this, and 8, 7, 6, 5. And let's undo the positive lead that we had on the chandelier light and put it on the normally closed button. And as soon as I put this in here, you notice that the light comes on. It isn't quite tight, but that'll work to show you what's going on. Now when I hit the number 8 button on the remote, the small light on the board comes on and the chandelier light goes off. I'll turn it off again and we're rotating back and forth. You can do that with some of the lights in your Dollhouse by putting it on, instead of the A terminal on the large 12-channel remote, or the normally open connection on the 8-channel remote, put it on the normally closed position. And when you first plug in the remote control or turn on the electric to the Dollhouse, the lights that are connected to the normally closed will come on. And then when you hit your remote control, it'll turn that light off, and something that you have on the normally open circuit will come on. So you can alternate that way. Let's go ahead and turn that back off. I'm going to just unplug it so we can turn 8 off. Go back over here to 4, 3, 2, and 1. We have one last thing that I like to do on the board, and that's to take our liquid tape and go ahead and put a little liquid tape every place that we soldered. So I'm going to put a little bit of the black liquid tape on all of these solder points. Basically, that's all there is to it. You've got your remote control. We talked a little bit about what you could use a remote control for. A little bit of planning that you need to do because you need to run one of the wires from each circuit that you're going to control on the remote control down to the control board to be able to put it in there. If your house is already wired, you've got wallpaper up, and you can't easily get to individual light wires to connect it, I would stay away from trying to put a remote control in. But if you're at a position where you're just putting all of the electric in, it's quite easy to bring those wires down. And remember, I said that the ground wire of every light can be connected to the ground or the black side of your flat tape wire or your round wire, whatever you're using throughout the Dollhouse, and connect it to the closest place that you have a ground. It's the same ground wherever it is in the Dollhouse. You don't have to bring both wires from every circuit that you're going to control down to the control board. Now, all you need is the red side or the switching leg of the light, and then connect it onto the normally open side of the board. And as I said, I pre-wire these so that the common is hot on the board. And what the relay is doing is just switching from the normally closed side over to the normally open side. That's it. Have fun. If you have any questions, you're welcome to give me a call.